Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Star Wars video. This is going to be my review for the first episode of the new Star Wars TV series, The Mandalorian. So, I suppose first thing we need to get into is the whole, Disney Plus kind of launch slash non-launch, because of course it actually only launched today in like 3 countries. So like pretty much most of Europe didn't have like actual access to it. So I wouldn't be at all surprised if over the next couple of days we pretty much find out that The Mandalorian is has been the most pirated show of like all time, just because of how unavailable this show was to watch officially, despite all the hype for it. But I have watched it, despite no official means, and I really did like it. I think for anyone who's really feels like Star Wars is in a slump right now, with the movies not being all that great recently and stuff like that, this is a honest, true return to form. And I think it was somewhat expected. I think most people were pretty hyped for this based on the trailers, based off the interviews from like Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau. They were saying all the right things that, made it clear that this was a show being made by fans, by people who knew what they were doing, knew what fans wanted. And that was made abundantly clear even in just this first episode with what this show was able to do. And that is to just, introduce us to this new character. He doesn't talk a lot, but you get at least some bits of character from him. You get very cool world building over the course of this first episode, as we get to see a lot of, alien species that we've sort of seen before, kind of mixed in with maybe some of the ones we maybe haven't quite seen all that much. But it feels like, okay, we're in Star Wars here, but it's maybe not specifically the areas we've seen before. And then we know the general kind of tone of these sort of bounty hunter style things, and they do that, but they do it in a very interesting way, because they start to sort of get us caught up with some of the sort of, the jargon, how exactly bounty hunting works as a profession. It's not just this wild, chaotic thing where like anyone who's a good fighter can just, join up and just start go around, just rounding people up. There seems to be kind of a system to it, rules to it, and they got some of that across with moments like the pucks that have like the hollow kind of projection of who the person is, the codes for who they are, the kind of fobs to track it. So there's some official aspects to this. There has to be rules to it, of course. Like, what if 2 bounty hunters go after the same thing, and they can come up with these deals on the fly to be like, it seems like if you're part of like the bounty hunter guild, it is not a good thing to sort of kill another bounty hunter. So you can come up with these deals where you can split the reward, but it seems like, based on what was said, like you can't split the sort of renown in a way from the hunt, I suppose. So that was very cool to see, and then to cut to like, okay, this is how it's officially done. Now let's have a sort of more kind of under the counter style deal where they don't kind of have all of the information. It's more of maybe what we usually expect of bounty hunting. It's not the normal one, and so you get this kind of more shady, mysterious deal that sort of starts it off, and it ends on a huge cliffhanger about what exactly it was, which is the other huge world building thing presented in this episode, and that is what the hunt that he's on is, what the bounty is a, I suppose in context, a young member of Yoda's species. That was an incredible reveal, because I didn't expect it at all. But the second, like, I think they talked about like, oh, he's 50 years old, it's 50 years old, it's small. You sort of knew what they were building up to before you even saw what the alien looked like. And that's massive, because this has been one of the most, tightly kept secrets in like all of Star Wars. That you look on the wiki right now, just on Yoda's page, And what does it say about his species? It's just called Yoda species. We've never had a name for his species. We only know, like, I suppose, two canon members of his species, and that is Yoda and then Yaddle, who we get to see a little bit of on the Council in episode 1. And then I think in a few, like, other expanded universe type stuff, we have had, I think, maybe 1 or 2 other members of the species introduced. I think mainly like kind of older Republic stuff. So like it's not like this is a species they've used a ton across the franchise. There is still, you know, an amount you can count on one hand instances of this species. Nothing really explained about the longevity. Admittedly, the sequel trilogy has kind of done its best to maybe diminish how important Yoda species is with the whole Maz Kanata thing, and apparently like she's like, I can't remember the specific details, but isn't she meant to be like 3,000 or something like that, and so on, or whatever? So that's a little bit weird, but still, it doesn't take away the excitement of the fact that it feels like they're going to now explore a little bit of Yoda species, because it seemed like the guy who's interested in Imperials, again, it's the first episode, I don't have a grasp on the names of all the characters yet, but the guy who seems really into sort of Imperial stuff, had the Imperial Guards, sent the Mandalorian on this kind of quest. He seems interested in this. He was like, he was pretty much like, make sure it's alive, but I understand bounty hunting can be a complicated profession. I'll still accept it if, you know, it ends up being killed. And then you had the guy who very much felt more like the doctor, the sort of technical guy. He's like, no, that's not what we agreed on. It has to be alive. They're clearly doing some sort of research, I think, on this rare species that there's not many instances of. So, of course, that's why they're willing to, you know, put up such a high bounty for this, in that the bounty is not money, it's just Mandalorian steel or iron, whatever it is. What's it called? I can't remember the name that they said. Either way, we found out a little bit about it in Star Wars Rebels during the sort of Sabine Mandalorian kind of arc we got towards the end. It is the sort of lightsaber resistant material that a lot of the best Mandalorian armor is made out of. It seems like the Mandalorian's helmet is made out of it, and then the kind of money he gets up front is a piece of that steel which they make into a shoulder pauldron for him. So very, very cool to see that, of like, okay, I think I get where we're going for here. As he progresses through all these jobs, he's going to gradually build up his official armors, and potentially by the end of like the first season or the second season or whatever, he'll have his full set of armor, and he'll more resemble the likes of I suppose primarily Jango Fett more than anything. But either way, very cool, especially when we got to go to the section. I don't really know the place, but it seems like there is a sort of maybe like underground, you know, sort of tribe left of the Mandalorians. They talk about like a great purge having happened, which I think is probably what the Clone Wars arc is going to cover. Because, of course, we're coming back to the Clone Wars with the last season. And the big arc they're teasing is the big battle on Mandalore. That was something we were focusing on, and we're going to come back to it. And I suppose this is Dave Filoni sort of bridging both of his series in a way together, of this is a huge moment of like, yeah, why is this kind of, you know, legendary warriors, the Mandalorians, the potential that they have, why aren't they around in like the original trilogy anymore? And we see here, like, okay, there's just this, it's seemingly just this one small kind of group of people here that escaped that, trying to keep their sort of culture alive, and they're trying to get back their metal and stuff like that. That's why the blacksmith, I suppose, it's why she was like, you know, it's good that this has got back to the clan. And even the guy who's offering the bounty is like, I think it's good that the Natural Order is returning to things. The Mandalorians, this belongs to them. So that guy seemed like he wanted to get back to the way of the Empire. And I thought that was an interesting little character trait for that guy, who we didn't get to see a lot of in this episode, but just that even though the Empire is gone, he still wants to keep it around. Like, his guards probably aren't actual stormtroopers, but he has them wear Imperial outfits. The the scientist guy who was like, no, that's what we agreed upon. He probably isn't an Imperial officer, but just because he's working with this guy, he has him wear the Imperial officer outfit. It's just that interesting thing of like he really supports the Empire and wants things to go back to that way. That's what he considers to be the natural order of things. It does make you question what he wants from the Yoda species and so on. And it was interesting. Like they didn't. There was no immediate like reaction from I think the droid or the Mandalorian to like they know necessarily the full details here, but beyond the surprise of like it's basically a baby, but we were told it was 50 years old. Like what's going on here? And just the droid just says different species must age at different rates, and so it confirms one thing about Yoda's species, which is clearly that it's not a case of they just live a long time, but they mature at the exact same rate as, say, a human. So it seems like, despite being 50 years old, this 50-year-old Yoda species is still in a sort of child stage, very young child stage, giving you the impression that it probably takes 100, maybe 200 years for one of this species to come to maturity. And then it's going to ask the question, of course, of like, is there a secret to how they live so long? Is that maybe why there's the interest in them? Are all of them by default force sensitive? That's an option, given that Yaddle and Yoda, of course, were both force sensitive, and that's our two main examples. Or is there something else? And this is where there's an option to be like, what is the home planet of this species? Their origins? Why are there so few of them? How does this work? Because it is interesting. It's the question that like never gets asked, and it's amazing that this show, like it surprised me that it touched on this at all. But it makes me interested in watching it. That I care about the whole bounty hunting stuff. The Mandalorian himself seems to have a bit of a backstory, which I'm sure they'll get into a little bit of what exactly happened, why he is this way versus things in the past. And yeah, so they're hitting it on just like I think all of the key points of like doing the good world building just from the sense of vehicles that we know, alien species that we know about, it seems like weapons and droids we know about, but still also being able to do kind of new stuff and new things with the species. In that the Nick Nolte character, who I think is an Ugnaught, like just seeing one of them talk a lot more and come across as a very wise character, and the Mandalorian, who wasn't really treating anyone particularly well, I suppose, early on, gave him respect because he saved him, and he knows about the blurgs, was a cool kind of animal species we got to see here. And just okay, that's cool. That's a nice little character moment of just the Mandalorian giving this character respect for what he was able to do and his knowledge, and the idea that he will help him to where this encampment is. It was primarily a Trandoshan camp, but there was other species involved. It seemed like it was mainly just a group of thugs basically holding on to this precious cargo, of course, the Yoda species. I hope they give it a name. I just so we don't have to keep saying it's a Yoda species, or like unknown species, that sort of thing. It just makes talking about it awkward. He wants them off the planet, even if it means potentially leading bounty hunters to their death. He knows that they're not meant to be here, and things will be more peaceful with them gone. It was like, that's a good character arc for that. And it's not just defining like Ugnaughts as being sort of like carbonite technicians or something like that. That's always, I think, a good thing in Star Wars when it does that, because while I think it's usually very good at developing different species and stuff like that, it can at times get into sort of very much this species is this thing and that thing alone. They can never just be different. Whereas like humans in Star Wars can be anything effectively. They can be jacks of all trades, but like Nemoidians have to be from the Trade Federation. The Munes have to be bankers and stuff like that. I like this idea of just like, here is a character who's an Ugnaught and stuff like that. Even just, you know, showing like, oh, we see some Rhodians, I think we see an Aqualish at some point. Then little moments like when he's getting paid towards the start of the episode. He's initially offered Imperial credits and it's just like, no, that's no good here. The Imperial, the Empire is gone. And even though the guy says, you know, it's still worth money, like it's still used, he doesn't trust it. I suppose the idea of like, it is a currency that probably could lose its value just overnight if someone decides it. So the switch to, oh, we'll use calamari money, but I can only pay you half, and he accepts it. And like, oh, the calamari money is this sort of like see-through type coins, and it's just like, that's cool. Just getting across the idea that the Mon Calamari use this as this is their currency. This is what it looks like. Very cool stuff that we don't get in a lot of other Star Wars. They'd say stuff about credits, Republic credits, and stuff here and there, but like not particularly a lot about different currencies. So just little details like that is something you can do in a TV series like this. And I think that's very, very cool. The ship I thought was really well done in terms of like, was some of it CG, was some of it practical. I just thought it worked nicely into the show. The Razor Crest, the little bit of an explanation of like it's pre-Empire. I like the classic design of the ship. It is a cool looking ship. I think it looks very good. And it seems like from the trailers that we've seen before that there is going to be some ship-to-ship combat at some point. And it looks like they're going to be doing that very well. The action that we did get to see, the big, two bounty hunters versus an entire army of thugs, was actually a pretty cool fight scene. I'm not going to say it was overly tactical or anything like that, but I like that it was a kind of extended action scene of just, they're the more skilled fighters, but they're just completely outnumbered, and they're trying to get in, and, they eventually have to, almost sacrifice the droid to get in, and then the turret is brought in, and it was a kind of dynamic fight scene. I liked how it was done. It got across that the Mandalorian is skilled, but he's not like unstoppable in that way. That he was sort of taken by surprise by the Blurgs earlier on, and if the Ugnaught didn't arrive, he probably would have been killed or something. So little things like that are good. It's just like he's good, but he's not. It's not impossible to get one over on him. Is I suppose the main thing to say. So, I'm not going to go on too long here because it was just the first episode, just the introduction, but very positive so far. Definitely, I think it's as a proof of concept. Can Star Wars work as a live action TV series? The answer has to be yes, and it seems like they have a plan. This job kind of revealing something new, that like this, why is the bounty on a child effectively of this species? This might change the Mandalorian, who seems to be very much business. He'll do things the way they are. Is there going to be a sense that throughout the series we're going to be protecting this thing or not? Because there is always the potential that like we just move away from this. It's not focused on at all. This is just a nice little Easter egg at the end. So, there's still potential that we might not get what we want out of this, but they teased it here. I think they did that for a reason. Hopefully we learn some more. But yeah, they're my thoughts on the first episode of The Mandalorian. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts are if you got a chance to watch the episode. What are your thoughts versus, what you expected it to be? And now that we've seen some of it, where do you think it's going to go? And so on. But yeah, that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.